Well, greetings, wow, I lost my voice there. Greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night right here at the Sports Krib. I know a lot of you are probably watching the NBA draft. Actually, I got caught up in it. That's the reason why I'm a little late, trying to figure out whether the Spurs had traded that pick to Minnesota or what was going on. But anyway, we're here at the Sports Krib. Let's get our usual business out of the way. You can see the Sports Krib scrolling along the bottom there, home of the Sports Krib Network. On YouTube, you can subscribe and donate to Cash App, $ JE King 3. All proceeds will go to furnishing prizes for our fantasy football league. We do have some fantasy basketball also. But you can ask Demetrius about the shirts that we had for last year's champion. With that being said, let's get our man Dave in here. Dave, how have you been doing?
Doing okay. I like your shirt there, James. Looks nice.
Thank you. I believe I love the colors here myself. Yeah, and it fits real nice too. Yeah. So glad to have you back this week, and had a little scare last week there, so we hope all that's over. I've been through the same thing myself a few times, but I've already had 2 heart attacks, so it doesn't really matter. Uh,
No,
how is
all's well on the home front. Sue has a couple follow-ups, but other than that, everything's okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. So does Sue have a corner for us tonight?
She does, of course.
Okay.
So here it goes. In our first weird story of the upcoming Olympics, of which I'm sure there will be many, is the one about the Dutch golf team. Dutch Olympic officials are keeping home 2 male and 1 female players from the golf competition in Paris because they believe their world rankings are too low for them to have a realistic chance against 60-player fields. The Netherlands Golf Federation said Tuesday it presented, quote, extensive arguments and data, unquote, in a June 14 meeting with the Dutch committee that oversees the Olympics, hopeful of showing unique differences in golf compared with other sports. Quote, according to them, it has not been demonstrated that there is a reasonable chance of a top 8 ranking during the Olympic Games, unquote, the Netherlands Golf Federation said in a statement. It's the second straight Olympics that Dutch officials have kept golfers home for not being ranked among the top 100 in the world. Most telling about the Dutch decision is what happened at the Tokyo Olympics. Rory Sabatini qualified at number 161 in the world and shot 61 in the final round to win the silver medal in a historic day for Slovak golf. Golf is different on every course in every country on any day all over the globe. Over 4 days, one of the best 30 golfers in the world tends to win. But sometimes, quite often really, they scrape and claw to be just 1 stroke better than a player you weren't expecting would contend. I can attest to that. I play in a golf pool for every major, and you have to just pick 8 players that will score better than everyone else's 8 players. That sounds easy. Most of us have a few of the same, like Scotty or Rory or Brayson on our list. But that's where it gets tricky. All of a sudden, you have to have Aberg having a great tournament and Morikawa falling apart. I love people from the Netherlands. They are funny and friendly. So this is surprising to me that they don't understand what a shame this is not to allow everyone to participate into an event that's only held once every 4 years. So that's Sue's Corner.
No, okay. There are fantasy golf leagues on Yahoo. I happen to play in one. That's the reason why I said it. but yeah,
Right.
I think it's the same format as Sue's talking about. Did she say 6 or 8?
Eight in her case. She does one. It's from one of her old jobs. Is at a place she no longer works at.
Yeah. Okay.
But they have a group of people that they have a tournament every year, and actually she does it. She's won some money a couple of times. So
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Is it a tiger situation? Are you carrying the bags?
in that case, absolutely.
I'm kind of waiting for Don to come back in here because there is some Facebook footage. Oh, there he is. There he is. Uh, Don, how are you
Yes.
doing this evening?
It's hotter than hell in Texas right now, but I'm doing good.
Uh, I know it's raining like Hades in Pittsburgh. I can tell you that. My friend just called me just before the show. So Pittsburgh is getting rain sideways, I hear.
Hey,
I
Yeah,
didn't.
James.
we're supposed to get that same rain in about an hour, which we haven't.
James.
We haven't had rain for over a week, and it was in the 90s here.
Go ahead, Don.
So I've been doing this show with you for going on 10 years now. This is the first time I've seen you without your boonie hat. I not know that Snoop Dogg was on our show. I never seen your hair braid like that.
uh, I was afraid of getting that Frederick Douglass look, so I decided I had to go.
Well, yeah, I'd be afraid of Freddie Douglass too. Hell, but I like it. I like it, James. I like it.
Thank you.
I'm sure the ladies like it too, don't they?
Yeah. I've gotten quite a few. It goes back about 30 years since the last time I braided my hair, but at least I still have enough. So, but Don, we were just talking about golf, and I remember that you have some footage on Facebook of you and a group of your guys playing golf also.
Oh yeah. That's when my brother hit the green on a par 4. Hit the green. He's about, I don't know, 6-7 feet away from the hole. My brother's the best non-pro or best amateur golfer I've ever seen. He's amazing. But yeah, that was about 8-9 years ago. It's at the Riverside Golf Club there in Floresville, south of here. Amazing shot, and yeah. That was my older brother, the one that played wide receiver at UT.
Oh, okay. All right. So you played the line and your other brother played wide receiver. So I guess we know who has the speed, or at least who had the speed anyway. All right. Yeah. So
he was a football, baseball guy, and I was a football track guy. I did shot put and discus.
Okay. All right. Okay. I thought you was going to say the pole vault now. No, just kidding.
Did a pole vault and end up that pole at my ass. I don't want to do that.
Oh man, I did try that a couple of times in high school, but no. And they didn't have the ones that bend then. I mean, you remember. I'm sure you remember the old ones, Don. Before they had the ones that slingshotted you over the pole, where you actually had to run and plant it and use your strength to get up over the damn bar. I think then the record then, if you did anything over 14 feet, you were amazing. Now it's like 18 or something, or close to 18 anyway. But guys, I was hoping we had a little more baseball guys in here, because just some strange things happening in baseball.
Yep.
And actually, this first one, I was kind of unaware of, but a guy that's sitting on the bench, if he thinks that he's going to be a pinch hitter, he can actually go to a machine and dial up the pitcher that he thinks or that he knows that he's going to be pitching against. And he can actually take practice swings on this thing. It's called, I'm going to traject, I'm going to say. Now, I'm thinking, like we used to all talk about, hitters versus pitchers. If you have a machine sitting in your team area where you can actually, like I said, you can go and dial up whatever pitcher is on that other team, you can dial him up. You can actually pitch against what the machine says are going to be his favorite pitches, and you can hit against him. Now I'm thinking, like maybe this is the reason why we have so many high-scoring games now. And do you think that a machine like this gives the hitters advantage? I mean, before it used to kind of be, mano a mano out, Could you imagine, Hank Aaron or Willie Stargell with a machine like this where he could go and actually practice before he, against whoever? I mean, what's your thoughts there, Dave? Technology is wonderful, right?
Yeah, well, apparently they've been permitting pitching machines in game for some time, and with the traject technology, the reason it wasn't allowed is because it was online in order to access it, and then that was considered too liable to be hacked or something like this. So it wasn't allowed. And then they came out with a version that's offline. And so then Major League Baseball said, well, that was our objection. We're going to allow in-game use. Now, from the pitcher's perspective, they're of course against it because they're saying, well, hey, we don't have anything similar. We can't.
Right.
There's not a batting simulator that we can warm up against. That's kind of their argument. I think in baseball's case, though, I think that the reason that they're going, I read an interesting statistic today that currently Major League Baseball's batting average is 242 overall, which is the third lowest in baseball history since 1900. The only 2 years that it was lower was 1968 when they lowered the mound, again, to assist pitching at that time, I think. And then in 1908, and that was during the dead ball era. So it sounds like they're trying to spice up even more hitting. Now, another counter statistic that I saw was that the strikeout rate for like batters facing relief pitchers is now below 23% for the first time in 8 years. So what was happening is that like a reliever would come in and nearly 1 out of 4 times they would be getting strikeouts. And so I just found that those statistics are interesting, and maybe that's what's kind of driving. What I would kind of follow is what happens to the overall baseball average. If all of a sudden they start hitting 260, over the next season or two, well, then that probably this trade technology is really giving them an unfair advantage. But in terms of the batters, again, they don't know, especially late in the game, they don't necessarily know who they're going to face. So they might have to, well, I guess they could put in 3 or 4 different pitchers and face all.
Yeah, well, the article that I read, it was like the guy knew that he was going to be a pinch hitter. The manager had told him, and he put, I guess, the most likely closers that he would be facing, if he were to pitch hit in this position. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it gives you so many, different things. Like you said, it might not be online, but I mean, you have the advantage of, facing 3 or 4 different pitchers. you're facing, the machine is telling you this is his go-to pitch, or this is, he'll use this certain pitch, so many times. I mean, well, I'm waiting for the time when there'll be no players on the field.
It's coming.
Yeah.
But honestly, I would follow the batting averages over time to see what the real impact of this is. I don't think we really know yet, because this is the first season, and it'll probably take 2 or 3 seasons really to determine what is there a real impact from this. I mean, if I were a hitter, I would love to have something like that. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Don, what do you think? I mean, AI is taking over everything else. No more swinging, no more swinging and miss.
I'm all for technology for the most part, but sometimes, like in athletics, I think it goes a little over the top. I think this might be one of those situations. For a long time it was, is AI going to take over umping? The job of the officials, called ball strikes, have a little sensor on the plate tell you. But it seems like it's going a little bit further than that. So I know a lot of people were cheering when they thought that maybe the umpires would be replaced, but now you got all this other technology coming in. So at heart, I'm a purist, and so I'm very cautious about things like this. Like you said, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, DiMaggio, those people, they didn't have that stuff, and they were knocking the hell out of the ball. So I just think that we should maybe retain some of the old school stuff when it comes to our athletics.
Yeah.
Put that technology to use. Let's go start a colony on Mars or something. Don't screw with athletics.
Yeah, I mean, you love technology. I mean, it's talking to the quarterback. I mean, things like that. I mean, those are fine. But I think when you start, like sometimes you tinker a little too much. You got that nitrous car, and you adjust the fuel just so much. It's like, well, let's go one more, and then the car blows up. And I'm just looking at, as you said, talking about the umpires. What happens to the first and third base coach? If the guy's on first base. I mean, I'm just saying. Sometimes, this year's combine, and I'm talking about baseball, looked a little different. And I'm not sure if you guys were actually aware of this, but instead of using the traditional 60-yard dash, they used a 30-yard dash with the runner starting from a steal position. What do you think about that, Don?
Well, I think, when you're doing a combine, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever, you're trying to simulate game conditions, and starting in a still position. I think that simulates a game situation. I'm all for it. If the managers and coaches think that's going to improve the team, I'm all for it. I remember in high school we had to do what we call the 12-minute run. We just run for 12 minutes. And someone asked, well, why are we running 12 minutes? And our coach explained to us very simply, he said, we play 12 quarters a game. 4 quarters a game. Each quarter is 12 minutes. So that's like, 48 minutes total that the game is, not including timeouts and, halftime and all that. He said, someone had did a study that said that you're actually running for 12 minutes in a 48-minute game. And so we're going to run 12-minute run. I'm like, wow, That's crazy. So not necessarily that's the game situation. You're not going to like run 12 straight minutes, but I can see where the concept is coming from. So I just think that, if they're starting to steal position, why not? I mean, that's part of the game.
What do you think, Dave? What do you
Yeah.
think, Dave? Starting at the time in that 30-yard dash instead of the 60-yard dash.
Yeah. Well, one thing, with the 12-minute endurance run, I think that Don Shula used that with the Miami Dolphins back in the 70s. And for very much the same reasons. What was the idea? Hey, can you sustain the pace, of a football game? But getting back to baseball, to Don's point, well, the distance, the baseline distance between the bases is 90 feet. That's 30 yards. So actually, if they're in a steal position, maybe they could even make it a little bit shorter. But I think that that's more closely identifying, how quickly can you get between the bases. Now, what I would do with the 60-yard dash, rather than having it a straight line distance, I know many years ago, and again, this goes back to the 70s, when I was in high school, we had a player that a minor league team was looking at, and our Spanish teacher, Doc Alonso, he was a Cuban refugee who was our Spanish teacher, but he was a big baseball nut. Well, he was timing him on the baseball pass. And so with the 60, I would keep the 60-yard dash if it was from first to third base, where you're not running straight line distance, but you're having to run the base path from first to third. And that might give you a more realistic idea of how quickly a player can, if the ball's hit, how quickly can they cover from first to third, and maybe have them in a leadoff position, not necessarily a steal position, but usually they'll be leading off by 4 or 5 feet off of first base. So if it's helping them select players that are going to have a better chance of making the league, it makes total sense to me.
Actually, Dave, they might incorporate them both.
Yeah.
Because right now this is kind of, this is the first year, data. So we'll see what happens.
Because how many times in a baseball game are they sprinting 60 yards?
Right.
Maybe an outfielder, but usually not, because they're already, by the time the ball's hit, they're already trotting to get it. But around the base pass, I could see that.
Too bad we don't have Willie Mays out in center field. Anybody remember that throw? See if you can beat Willie to the plate. How's that?
Roberto Clemente had a pretty nice arm.
Oh yeah. But So once again, Sports Krib hits everything. So we're going to talk a little bit about basketball too. Klay Thompson has taken down all his Warriors social media stuff. They say that there might be a little disharmony between the team and Klay because he feels that they should keep him. What do you think, Dave? Have we seen the end of the Splash Brothers?
To use another sports, and I'll have to punt on this one. I don't know. I really don't. So I have to punt on this one.
What do you think, Don?
I think it's very possible. The thing about change is always constant, and we're seeing that the power shift from the west to the east now, and so it's only a matter of time before things happen. I mean, the Spurs dynasty, it's gone. It had its time. The old Lakers and Celtics from back in the old days, they're gone now. There's a new Celtics team, and Splash Brothers. Hey, it was fun while it lasted, right? But things change, and people get old and people get tired. People want to retire and go play golf and spend time with family. So I could very well see that happening.
Yeah. Little college football too. Former coach Les Miles is suing LSU for vacating his wins and making him ineligible for the Hall of Fame. So, Don, do you put on your black socks or you got tea and sympathy for Coach Miles?
I have no sympathy for Coach Miles. Never
I
have,
wonder,
never will.
I wonder why we do that.
So he's saying that he won't be eligible for the Hall of Fame. There was no guarantee he was going to be in there anyway. I mean, he did some crooked stuff, and so to me, he's not a Nick Saban type. He's not a Bear Bryant. He's not Bo Schembechler. He's not one of those. He's not Joe Paterno. So, no, he can sue all he wants to. I mean, it's his right. He can sue, but I mean, to me, it's a moot point. He wasn't going to Hall of Fame anyway.
Dave, black socks or tea and sympathy?
No, I have my black socks on this one. Hey, the rules were broken. They got punished. They had to vacate these wins, and what the issue was. Now you could kind of argue, was this his fault? Because the issue at hand is that they had a booster that paid a player's father about $180,000. That's the allegation. And actually, that kid ended up being drafted into the NFL, and I think he played in the UFL this past season. But he had an ineligible player, and plus there were other allegations at LSU. There was other issues there. And the whole idea, my chances of getting into the College Football Hall of Fame. Well, I mean, I don't know that he necessarily would have made it anyway. So I don't have a whole lot of sympathy. One thing I did read about it though is that unlike some other halls of fames, the College Football Hall of Fame for a college coach, they have a benchmark that you have to have at least 60% wins in order to be eligible to be voted in. And in his case, it drops into like 59.7. So it drops in below the threshold.
Right.
But it also excludes coaches like Schellenberger, Harry Schellenberger. I think he coached at Miami for a while, but he also had coached, and he was a fantastic coach, but he also coached at some early programs and stuff. So it kind of excludes those coaches that took on new programs or that maybe had a few losing seasons before having a really great career. And so I'm not a fan of these like hard and fast metrics that you have to meet in order to be eligible. I think that the totality of a coach's record should be taken into consideration. And so that you can have some of these coaches that are excluded because, hey, they didn't always go to the great programs to try to start them up. So,
Good point. Don, Congress is trying to get a congressional bill that prevents college athletes from becoming employees of the universities they compete for. Don, should athletes want to become employees?
No. Okay, and we've talked about this before, and sometimes politics seeps into our show. Congress needs to stay the hell out of college athletics. Okay? Congress needs to work on, lowering our tax rates and making sure we're protected against the communists and the terrorists and all that. We don't need to be messed with the college athletics. Get the government out of that. Now, keep in mind, a few years ago when all this NIL was coming up and, I was very much against it. Remember that, James? I was against it. I was like, no, this is crazy. Now I'm like, hell yeah. Introduce the free market to athletics. I love it. Because you know why? University of Texas is benefiting. Hook 'em.
He said, hook 'em
Yeah.
horns.
Yeah, so I don't want government interference. I don't want government interference in my life anyway, but not athletics either. So that's just my take.
Well, Dave, I mean, I guess we could throw Penn State, in that same, category.
Well,
But what do you think? Hey, should athletes want to become employees?
yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree with Don that it's become political, but the problem is that the government's involved whether you have this bill or not. The bill is actually in committee. I think the bill is coming out of committee, so it's very early, and it would be It's a Republican-sponsored bill, and the Senate's still controlled by the Democrats. So, depending on how the Senate the Senate Democrats responded to it, the chances of this becoming a bill, I think, aren't great unless there's a big change in the election. But the government's still involved in it anyway, because you have the National Labor Relations Board that already kind of made a ruling that students are athletes. So you kind of have a quasi-governmental body of unelected officials, appointed officials, making a determination as to what they are. Now, whether should they want to be employees, I think is what you were asking.
Should they want to become employees?
Yeah, well, I think on the one hand, if they want to be represented, if they want to have a collective bargaining unit, then yeah, then they should want to be, because essentially they're making a profession out of it, out of college athletics. Now, should they? I mean, I know that they don't like the term what is it, college athlete, or a non-professional. I kind of wish that we could kind of go back to that. We're not, because money is corrupting, the whole idea of college sports. It's football, it's in basketball. Those are minor leagues of the NBA and the NFL. And I think it's a shame. And maybe what will happen is you may have some colleges that all of a sudden say, hey, we're abandoning college athletics because we don't want to be in the business of having to collective bargain with all the sports teams. And maybe that should. I don't know what will happen, but we'll see. But I can see from an athlete's point of view, if they want representation and to maximize their money-making abilities while they're in college, then yeah, from their perspective, I'm sure that this that they would be in favor of it.
Well, so are you going to have the national organization of linemen versus the national organization of wide receivers? Wide receivers are going to have their own. Then you
look at what's happening in the NFL. You had the running backs coming together saying, "Hey, we're being paid. We need to come together. You need to have an exception for running backs, when it comes to the salary cap." Now you have the same thing being said about quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And so the same thing's happening in the NFL, and you could have the same thing in colleges. And then what happens to the other? Because the National Labor Relations Board, their conclusion is you're being paid through scholarships. That's payment. What about the college wrestlers? What about the college swim team? They get scholarships.
Well,
so
I think
should they be employees too?
The original argument was brought by the Dartmouth basketball team, I believe it was.
Yeah, but there's Northwestern, and then in California, there's a lot of litigation taking place.
Okay.
And
Mr. Scott. Glad you could join us this evening.
Greetings. Greetings.
We were talking about a bill that was in Congress. Dave said he thought it might be in committee for making college athletes employees of the universities for which they play. Mr. Scott, do you think that athletes should want to become employees?
Well, I don't think the colleges want employees. I mean, I think they don't want to pay benefits. They don't want to pay workers' comp. They don't want to pay all of these things. Look, these football players in particular, there's injuries. So this whole thing about, once they started paying the players, see, these colleges a lot of them are going under. A lot of them are really hurting because they keep raising their tuition, and kids are now finding an alternative to going to college. With all these things online, with all this training online, people working at home online, doing more than one job at home, while they're just at home working, making more money. So they're up against it. They've had a great run, and they have gazillions of endowments. So how do they keep this gravy train going? I tell you, with the rising tuition, programs are being dropped because they're not keeping up with the current educational levels. There's IT and AI and all of these things that are moving into existence now. So the whole landscape is going to change. It's going to be a real, I believe. But as far as union, I don't see why the players would want to be an employee. And I'm sure that colleges wouldn't want that because they have more liability. They're going to have to pay unemployment if they're not working. They're going to have to do. So I think they're going down a huge rabbit hole here.
Yeah, it does sound that way. Like you said, sometimes you just have to leave things alone. Yeah. When's the last time Jack Daniels changed their recipe? I'm just asking.
Well, and that's kind of the way of the world now. As soon as I learn how to do something, on the computer, they change it.
Is Ranger agreeing with us tonight, Don?
Well, that's an example of the disagreement that I get. As soon as you change, as soon as you learn something, then they change it. Not for any good reason or anything, just because they want to do it different now. So we're in charge now, so we tell you what to do.
Yeah. Let's see. Was there anything else that we talked about here before you came on?
Okay. Amazon delivery.
Amazon.
He was barking at the Amazon guy.
No, I was just watching some of the draft, the NBA draft, just as far as current news, and I saw several, French players 18 years old, and I was talking to my buddy about it, and I said I don't have nothing against the French players, but I mean, when did they all of a sudden become the number one, number two? They're 18, 19, and he says I'm Frenchophobic now. He can call me Frenchophobic. It's not that. I'm just questioning. You can't question things now. You're a phobe if you question anything. So I thought it was very curious. Young, and who says that they're any good? Who says they're going to come over here and be that good? Number one picks. 18. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, considering that contracts in the NBA are guaranteed, So, but just like the NBA. Go ahead, Don.
I was to say, makes me wonder, Anthony. The Olympics are coming up. Could the French take the gold? Well, see, the thing about the French players, first of all, they're good, but they're
Don't
also
forget about Canada.
They've been playing a long
they're
time
also
on a high
19,
level.
20 years old. I mean, they're young. Yeah. So the French might be our competition for gold in the Olympics. Plus, they got home court advantage, right? To Paris.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
never know.
Hey,
Makes it interesting. Makes it interesting. So
what do we do then? Because everybody has pro players now. So what are you going to do then? You're allowed, is there going to be another dream team if we lose to France?
well, maybe at some point then there'll be a real world champion. You know, I mean, we say these teams, yeah, this is the world champion. Well, it's like the old wrestling. You know, you're a champion in Minneapolis, but then in Chicago, somebody else is a champion.
But you know, if you look at sports, and I just pulled one down my ass here. So like cricket was started in England, right? Who has the best cricket teams? Pakistan and India. So even though basketball started in the United States, hell, 10, 15 years from now, it might be dominated by Europeans. You never know. Just saying.
Yeah, because
history is a guide sometimes.
But you have to remember that those places were part of the British Empire at one time too. So, that's how cricket became popular there.
But,
but because it's also popular.
The American Empire.
It's also popular in Jamaica, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Jamaica and the Dominican Republic both.
Probably Bermuda.
I think the thing with basketball is all you need is a ball and a hoop, a basket, and you can play anywhere. It's so inexpensive to play. And I think that I lived in Europe for a number of years, and you could see players all over the place playing either soccer, but more often basketball, because you didn't need to have as much space to play basketball.
Yeah.
And so I could see where around the world it could really take off because it's inexpensive to play. Unlike baseball or football where you need a lot of equipment. Basketball, you need a ball and then you improvise a basket. However you do it. A peach basket.
Dave,
right?
All we needed was a football in the parking lot.
Right. And pick the gravel out of your shins like Jack Lambert.
I'm sure, Don, you know what I'm talking about. Come on, down there in Texas. I know.
Hey, I know exactly. Yeah. We played in the grass field, hot, dry, cracks, sticker burrs everywhere, rocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I played on some bad fields.
All right, guys. Let's talk a little NFL here. Tom Brady, the analyst. Quarterbacking in the NFL has gone backwards. Mr. Scott, do you agree or disagree?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think it's gone backwards from the standpoint of it being was always the key leadership position. And I think now sending plays in, all these things on their wrists, all these headphones. I mean, I don't know how much, the quarterback really calls the plays. I mean, I know they can audible. They see certain things. They have some freedom to do that. But and then you got 30, 40 coaches. I mean, instead of, on offense, a defense, a special teams, and that was it. I mean, so it's just it's a big brain trust thing, and I guess they think more heads are better than one. But that's kind of my current observation, kind of observation of that.
Dave.
Yeah, and I think what he was also what Brady was also talking about was the ability to adjust calls on the field, like he and Peyton Manning in some of their games. And
Peyton Manning beat him in the playoffs, wasn't it? I think he beat him two out of three.
Yeah. And with both of those quarterbacks, I mean, a lot of times they were calling their own plays. They were calling the audibles. And I think what it comes down to is, and it's happened in football for years and years. You know, long time ago, the decision making was made on the field, because when you had players playing both ways, and there was, you just lined up, ran a play, it was called on the field. And my best comparison is to rugby. Rugby made a conscious decision where they wanted what they called player centric games as opposed to coach centric games. And what they mean by that, player centric games, means that the key decisions are made on the field of play. And in football, it's the exact opposite. You have a coach calling the play, every play, it's coming in on their helmet. And then these players have to execute what's called for them. They might be making tactical decisions, but mostly, the plays that they're doing, they're trying to execute a play that's been called from the sideline, not something that's been called by the quarterback on the field of play. And like Terry Bradshaw he called all of his own plays in the 70s. And that's when Hollywood Henderson told him that, he was so dumb he couldn't spell cat if he was spotted the C in the egg. But I would venture to say, if you're calling your own plays on the field of play and winning, you have to have a grip of the game. So I think in that sense, I kind of agree with Tom Brady.
Don?
Well, think about America. Everyone has their opinions, and some are good, some are valid, some are kind of out there. I would say that quarterbacks play has gone backwards. We still have some outstanding quarterbacks out there. It's just right now we're in a transition. We're just a few years removed of losing Brady, losing Breeze, about to lose Aaron Rodgers. Peyton Manning, we lost him. We lost Eli Manning. And there's just new crop of quarterbacks coming up. And so, change is always constant. I remember before that group, you had like Dan Marino and John Elway and Joe Montana. There's just another group of quarterbacks. So as the new groups come in, they're establishing their identity. So I don't think it's quarterback plays, necessarily going backwards. I mean, you still got Mahomes out there, and so there's some young guys coming up. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's going backwards. It might look that way, but I would say that you're always going to have your elite quarterbacks in the game right now.
Okay. Dave, have the Pats set up head coach Gerard Mayo for success? They gave Rashad Stevenson a $36 million extension, $17 million guaranteed. Then they signed Antonio Gibson, the running back from the Commanders. How do you rate the Pats running duo, and whether or not they set Jared up for success?
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like a pretty solid duo. I mean, are they the best duo in the NFL? I don't know about that, but I think that they're very solid. And
they just have to be solid in the East.
What's that?
They just have to be solid in the East.
Well, right, and here's the thing: is it sounds like they're going about it where they want to have possession of the ball, ground and pound. Limit the dependence. We were just talking about quarterback play. Limiting the dependence on excellent quarterback play. There's other ways of winning the game, and it sounds like what they're doing is going after ball control, controlling the ball on offense, and not being totally reliant on the quarterback to win games. So we'll see how it works. You still got Miami. You still got Buffalo. It's going to be interesting to see how they stack up.
What do you think about the Pats there, Don?
He just stepped away for a minute.
I just saw he was there. Mr. Scott. I know you don't watch too many outside games, but there is an early game sometimes. What do you think about the Patriots?
Well, I think that last remark, James, was kind of a shot. Almost saying like I'm just a homer, and
Let
nothing matters. But
me see. Minnesota Twins,
you know,
Minnesota Timberwolves,
but of course you
Minnesota
wouldn't say
Vikings.
anything about that about Dave in Pittsburgh. Oh no, that's he's hands off for that. No, that's so no. The Pats, they're rebuilding. Come on, they're starting at the bottom. They're in a tough division. They're starting out again, and so I don't expect much from them this year. They should be building for the future, is what I think they will be doing. I don't think they have much choice, really.
Don, what did you think about the Pats? Are they setting Mayo up for success? They gave Ramon Stevenson that big purse. They gave him 35 mil. That's 17 mil guaranteed. Got Antonio Gibson from the Commanders. Like Dave said, are we seeing that transition where they don't depend on that quarterback?
Well, I think the I think the philosophy is to not have to depend on the quarterback so much. Try to establish other things. A good running game helps your pass game and vice versa, something like that. But I think they're trying to be more balanced than they were under Belichick. We'll see if it pays off, but I have no problem with what they're doing.
Okay. So, Don, let's start off with you on this next question here. Do you think that last week you weren't here, maybe it was the week before when we talked about whether or not Dak was going to be the next $60 million quarterback? So let's tone it down a little bit. Do you think that the fans' quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, will be the next $50 million quarterback, Don?
I don't know. I can't answer that question because I don't keep up with the Dolphins very much, and I'm not sure how crazy their general manager is. If this were Dallas, I'd say, oh yeah, it'll happen. But because Dallas, they're batshit crazy. But I don't know enough about the Dolphins front office. I think Tua is good, but I don't know if he's $50 million good. So I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Well, see, we should have had you last week when we were talking about whether or not Dak was worth $60 million because Trevor Lawrence signed that big deal.
But I like Trevor Lawrence, but I don't think he's worth $60 million either. I mean,
no, he got $50 million. He's the seventh highest paid quarterback right now in the NFL as of right now. So Tua is right there. Would be right within the $52 million range. Thinking if they gave him the extension. Dave, what do you think?
Well, he took a big step in the right direction by being healthy all last season. He played all 17 games. So he's certainly in the conversation. I think that he's their quarterback. Now, a couple quarterbacks that I think, and I wasn't here last week. I couldn't participate, but I wrote down Dak Prescott and Jordan Love as two potential quarterbacks that might beat Tua to the 50 million. But as you just pointed out, Trevor Lawrence is the seventh highest paid quarterback, and he's making $50 million a year. So that sounds like that's the new standard for a franchise quarterback. And I think as long as Tua stays healthy, he's in that conversation. So I could see him doing it. But there may be one of these things where if Jerry Jones if he finally acts on Prescott might beat him out, and there might be a waiting game between Jordan Love and Tua to see who signs first, with the idea that, hey, if this guy can get that, I can get a little bit more. Because sometimes agents will they'll wait to pull the trigger to see what the market is for another player.
Remember we talked about the $2 million difference a couple of weeks ago?
Right.
Mr. Scott, what do you think? Is Tua a $50 million man?
Well, in light of the market, he's got to be close. I mean, I think if they can continue to score like they were scoring last year and keep their offense intact, I mean, that's what their game is, scoring, shootouts, and, they're going to get in the playoffs. And at that point, it's just sometimes it's a matter of seeding, who has a home field, who's hot. But I think they're right in the mix. So, I mean, when you look at the market, I mean, Kirk Cousins and all these guys getting all these big bags. I mean, I think he's right up there.
Okay. Mr. Scott, will the Titans quarterback Will Levis have more or less passing yards than Panthers quarterback Bryce Young?
Oh God, either one of those guys. I can't really, their teams I haven't really followed, and boy, yeah, I don't know much enough to even comment on that one. That's where those quarterbacks, I keep my money in my pocket.
Don, what do you think?
On
Will Levis or
Bryce
Young?
He'll have a better season, more passing yards, just because he has a better supporting cast. Most definitely.
You agree, Dave?
No, I'm going to go with Bryce Young. He gained more passing yards last year, and I think that the Panthers are going to be playing a lot of catch up. So that means more passing. So I'm going to say Bryce Young has more passing yards than Will Levis.
Okay. All right. Dave, do you think that the coach are being cautious with the quarterback, Anthony Richardson? There's been reports of him still having a sore shoulder. Do you think Richardson will become a brittle quarterback and destined to have a short career as a starter? Or do you think, he's the real deal? Are you going to have your black socks on this one, or are you pulling out the fancy cashmere socks?
Well, I think the Colts should be cautious with the health of their quarterback. And but that said, I think it's too early to tell whether he's destined for a short career. And I would use the quarterback we were just talking about, Tua. His first couple seasons, he had those concussions, and people were talking about, well, hey, is his career over? Should he even be playing? And now we're talking about he might be the next $50 million guy. So I think that the Colts are wise to be cautious. And for that reason, I think it's too early to tell. We'll have to see how he does this season in play, and can he play a full season? And that's the same thing that I said about Tua before. And Miami's season was going to go the way Tua's health was, and he played all 17 games. So let's see how he does. Once they get the pads on.
Don, what do you think about Anthony Richardson? You think the Colts are being a little too cautious, or do you think he's destined to be that guy to play for 3 to 5 years and he's gone, or what?
I'm not really sold on him right now. And part is because I would like to see Sam Ehlinger get some reps, so I'm kind of biased, I'll admit. But we'll see how it goes. I just don't know if he's the answer they're looking for.
What do you think, Mr. Scott? You think the big boy is going to be there for a while, or what?
You know, I agree. I haven't seen enough of a sample of him. I mean, I like to see him play a whole season and how the team rallies around him. I mean, is he more of a running quarterback? Is he I just haven't seen enough of him to really say he's until he plays a full season. If he plays this season, I guess I could better tell where I think where he's headed.
Okay. Don, we're going to come down here to the NFC East here. Do you think that head coach Dan Quinn is in over his head with the challenge of the Commanders' head coaching job?
I don't think he's over his head. I think Dan Quinn will do a decent job there, more so than previous coaches. I think he was a good choice to lead the team, and I'm expecting the Commanders to be a lot more competitive this year.
What do you think there, Dave?
Yeah, I mean he has the experience, and I wish Reggie was on here to talk about his time in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, yeah.
But hey, he has head coaching experience, defensive coordinator experience with Seattle and Dallas. So I don't think he's in over his head. And the thing is I think that there's a lot of residual toxicity from the Dan Snyder era as owner of the Commanders, and it's a new ownership group, and so if they give him the right support, and it seems that they're going to try to do that, I think that Washington might, their arrow might be pointing upwards.
What do you think, Mr. Scott? You have that optimism for Magic and the boys? I think Magic is part of that group, isn't he?
I don't know. I suppose it could be. He's getting around with his money. So, but I think Washington's another rebuilding type team. You get a new coach. You got to kind of change your philosophy, where you're going with this. They're another team where I keep my money in my pocket. I just have a small sample of them. I have to see more.
You got some bulging pockets here, Anthony.
That's why we call him Mr. Scott.
Yeah, they can't cover it, so
Still staying there in the East, Don. Who's on the hottest seat? Head coach Brian DeBall or quarterback Daniel Jones? Talking about them Giants.
Yeah, so the Giants are going to be they're in a kind of bad position. And when it all comes down to, your executive he's in charge. He's responsible. So I'd say the head coach Dabble is on the hottest seat, just because, like I said, he everything is his responsibility. I mean, he's the buck stops with him pretty much. So I would say his seat is the hottest. I think Daniel Jones has 2 years to prove his worth, and then he'll be out of the league or he'll be traded.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think in season, Jones is on the hotter seat, because Dable's in control of his future during the season as long as he's head coach. Now, once the season ends, I think that Dable might be in the hotter seat, because they've made a lot of changes, and if they have another bad season, well then, like Don says, he's the guy in charge, and so then he's the guy more likely to go. And so I kind of split it in season. I think it's Jones, simply because Dable controls his fate. In terms of, if he has a bad string of games, does he stick with them or does he pull the plug on him? But once the season is over, I think clearly Dable is in the hotter seat. He needs to start showing some winning seasons there. More wins for the Giants.
What do you think, Mr. Scott?
I actually at one point thought Daniel Jones was going to be pretty good. I think he came here to Minnesota, what was it, year before last or whatever, in a playoff game and beat the Vikings. Big upset. So I thought, well, maybe they're on their way. But it took a big step back last year. And so, again, another, boy. I actually, from what I saw of him that year before, I think he's got potential. It's just who they're going to put around him. So I'd stick with him.
Okay. All right. Mr. Scott, have you kept up with the mini camps? They were talking about J.J. McCarthy's arm. They were talking about that you guys might have some interesting decisions to make at the defensive tackle. What's going on with your Vikings there, Mr. Scott?
Well, they're going to play Sam Darnold, but they want to get a good look at JJ. But I mean, I think the plan is pretty set that he's going to be the backup. And with Flores on defense, he's been putting together some pieces. The draft choice from Alabama. So how they're going to do in the division? I mean, I think the Bears are going to be better. Of course, Demetrius, he's going to say, the Lions, and that's why I wish he was really here. Why doesn't Demetrius debate me? Why doesn't he debate me about who's better than the Lions or the Vikings? Why doesn't he debate me?
Last week, there was nobody on but me and Demetrius. If you came on last week, it would have been perfect. Because Dave had an emergency and Don wasn't here.
Well, you must have gave him a head up that I wasn't going to be there.
So. No. We actually bet on whether or not you would show up.
Who's going to moderate this debate?
Not the man to the left, that's for sure. An unbiased.
I guess that leaves the man with the mustache and the bald head.
Yeah, it would have to be Don. He's very unbiased. So.
Don, I wanted to ask you about somebody, and for once, it's not about the Cowboys. But I was looking at a very interesting draft choice, and I saw that he was wearing a Texas uniform before he was drafted. So the Seahawks drafted Byron Murphy. Don, tell us a little bit about the former Longhorn. Did you hear me? I hope we didn't mute him. Let's see. I don't know. Don might be asleep. Don, did you?
Oh,
he
just
hit the wrong button, I think. We caught him with a bill. Well, anyway, we'll see whether or not Don comes back on. If not, here he is. Okay. You're back, Don. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what my connection with that. So Byron Murphy, we had a discussion about him on the radio the other day. They said he's the best defensive prospect to come out of the University of Texas since Earl Thomas. That he is to defensive tackle what Earl Thomas was to safety. So that's saying quite a bit. Earl Thomas, of course, the Legion of Boom. So I think Byron Murphy's going to have a great career in the NFL. And so is TJ Sweat. his teammate that also was drafted. Those two guys were the run stoppers. They were good on the pass rush. So it would not surprise me to see him be on the all rookie team.
Oh, okay. All rookie team. I'm gonna okay. We're recorded anyway. Mr. Scott is going to be very pleased to hear the different subjects that we're talking about tonight, Dave. Considering his opinion of Mr. Tomlin and the Steelers. But anyway, Bleacher Report reporter Christopher Knox says that the Steelers should pursue ex-chief wide receiver Richie James. I'm not sure whether he's akin to Rick or not, but there's been some rumors. They also picked up defensive tackle Wellington. I'm gonna say Prevalone or Prevalone off waivers from the Falcons. And do you think that it's possible, Dave, that the Steelers could give Justin Fields a Jordan Love type extension?
All right, yeah, I'll take these in reverse order. I think Jordan Love type extension is unlikely at the dollars that Jordan Love made. I could see the Steelers trying to sign Justin Fields to a 2 or 3 year contract prior to the start of the season just to lock him in, but they would be looking for a bargain price. I could see like maybe $8 to $9 million a year. Now, from Justin Fields' perspective, he might want to show what he has on the field to make some real money. And but I don't see the Steelers doing that, paying him a whole lot of money because one, he's the backup right now to Russell Wilson. And without seeing, what he can do in Arthur Smith's offense, I don't see them investing a whole lot. But they might try to sign him to a 2 or 3 year contract, but at a discount. And I don't know if Justin Fields would bite on that. In terms of
he does have doesn't he have something in his contract if he plays 10 games or more?
Yeah, I think that there's some incentives in there, but right now going into training camp, Russell Wilson's the number one guy, and then the Steelers would now if Russell Wilson gets hurt, then okay, well then Justin Fields is going to be playing. Now, at what point would they pull the plug on Russell Wilson? Well, probably not until they're out of the playoff picture. And that's probably not going to be until later into the season. So I think it would be difficult for Justin, unless it's just appearances in games. Maybe they put him into some packages, and maybe he could pick up those incentives that way. But as a starting quarterback, I don't see it early in the season unless Russell Wilson is hurt.
We play the Ravens Christmas Day.
The Chiefs Christmas Day. We play the Ravens.
The
Saturday before. In the NFL's wisdom, they're having them play Baltimore on a Saturday, and then the following Wednesday they play the Chiefs on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So now with the Wellington Prevalon, he hasn't played yet in the NFL. He was on the roster. They also signed another wide receiver, Jacob Copeland, but similar situation. Probably just camp bodies. And, we'll have to see once training camp starts to see how they build in. I was on a town hall Monday night where we were discussing kind of project what the Steelers defense might look like, the initial 53. And then we were debating, are they going to carry 7 or 8 linemen? But then once you counted up the linemen, I don't see where Prevalon would fit into those plans. But we'll see. I'm very anxious for training camp to start. with the your first thing about this Richie James, yeah, I mean he's caught like over 70% of his passes this last season. He was also a kick returner, so that's another attraction to the guy. Could they sign him? Sure, they could, but there's been reports of Russell Wilson throwing passes to DK Metcalf. Speaking of the Seahawks, right? So who knows what's going to happen there? They think Dave Bryan from Steelers Depot believes that the Steelers have about $20 million that they're going to be spending on their cap. Now, is that going to be to extend the Pat Fryer move, to do some in-house things, or will it be to sign another wide receiver? We'll see between now and training camp.
Okay. Final thoughts, Dave.
Yeah. Um, it was a little over 30 years ago that Charles Barkley, they had the "I'm not a role marker," a role model campaign, the marketing campaign, and basically Charles Barkley's message was, "Hey, kids should be emulating their parents, not athletes or celebrities." And and there was some pushback on the campaign, but it was a very successful campaign. But one of the things that Charles Barkley kind of expanded on, and the reason I bring up Charles Barkley is because he says he's going to retire. We'll see. Uh, but he expanded on it, and he believes that young folks should not just look at sports as an escape from poverty. He said that parents who work hard and provide a home and sustenance is the path out of poverty for most people. So, in other words, what Charles Barkley was trying to convey is don't limit your ambitions to just a long shot. Hey, I'm going to be an NFL player or an NBA player or something like this. Is that you should be building a solid foundation and be prepared to be a parent and to provide a home and sustenance and education for your children, and that's the path forward. So I thought that Charles Barkley, I know at times he can kind of be a lightning rod in terms of getting people a little getting their dander up a little bit, but I thought that he had a very solid message. So I just wanted to mention it since it was just over 30 years ago that campaign started.
Oh man, I was a young buck back then. Wow. Shit, uh, Don, final thoughts.
Yes.
Your final thoughts, Don.
Final thoughts. Well, there's two things going on in college. First thing, NCAA changed the rule about these coaching staffs. Um, you're allowed to have X number of coaches by position, and then you have analysts. And analysts were not allowed. They're allowed to be at practice, but on game days they cannot be on the field coaching. They had to stay in the press box. Well, they changed that rule. Now you're all these analysts that these colleges have hired can go down on the field and coach. So I don't know how that affect numbers on sidelines, but that's the thing going in. The other thing I want to talk about is a College World Series is over. Tennessee Volunteers won to beat Texas A&M, and within 12 hours after A&M lost, University of Texas stole their coach. And all my Aggie friends are losing
The
their
guy that said that he would never play, he would never coach Texas, wasn't it? Wasn't he one that said never, never?
Yeah, he said, I'm here to stay, and of course, the whole time he was, well, here's the thing people don't realize. Him and the athletic director at UT, Chris O'Connie, they're best friends. They hunt, fish together. I mean, they do stuff together, and the Aggies are acting like they're, got betrayed, but Texas, even though their season was not that good this year, well, I mean, they were good. They made playoffs, but Texas is a blue blood in college baseball. A&M is not. So he had a chance to go coach at University of Texas, and so all the Aggies are heard about that. Well, then today, the entire staff from the A&M team joined Texas, and then five of their players entered the transfer portal. It looks like at least 3 of them will end up at Texas. So the rivalry just got more heated, and I've been having fun, just going around with my Aggie friends because, they're insufferable. If you're in the SEC, I just be careful. A&M, they're a whole different. They're like a cult. It wouldn't surprise me if they had a guy with the purple Gatorade and the cooler just waiting for him to drink it. So it's gonna be fun.
Don, speaking of fun and rivalries, what about that bag that the Oklahoma coach got?
Hey, Venables?
Yeah, didn't he get a big payday just a few days ago?
Oh yeah. So Texas and Oklahoma, they have no problem opening up the purse strings for their coaches. And I hate Oklahoma, of course, they're a rival, but I actually like Britt Venables. I think he's a solid coach. He's a solid dude. I just feel bad he's at Oklahoma, but I find myself cheering for him. But whatever money he gets, he deserves.
Yeah, he got a bag too. I think about 30 mil or something like that. I forget what the exact figures were. Mr. Scott, your final thoughts for the evening. Anything happening special up there in Minnesota? Any events? Anything going on with the Scott collection? What's happening?
Well, I guess final thoughts, basically, just briefly, a couple of things. One, I'm trying to, the guy, Mike Tomlin, how many Super Bowls has he won?
2. Well, he's won 1 and lost 1, right? Yeah.
Okay, he's won 1 Super Bowl, and he's been there how long?
15 years, I think, 16.
15 years, 1 Super Bowl. I mean, then I say he just signed a 3-year contract for a big bag. I mean, I 1 Super Bowl in 15 years.
No, 1 win. 2 Super Bowls, 1 win.
1 win. Yeah, well, I mean, Bud Grant, 4 Super Bowls, no win. So, I mean.
Well, but wait a minute. Bud Grant and Mike Tomlin was like, that's Bud Grant was his great-grandfather, right?
just an example. So I guess that's one thing I don't understand, the affinity. And then here, what's happened? I happen to read the paper that there's a young girl in high school. She's a wrestler, and she's dominated the girls wrestling for 2 years. So this year she wrestled with the boys. Okay. And she's a good looking girl. Okay. So she wrestles in the finals and gets to, I think she came in 3rd or 4th. She beat a lot of guys. She beat one guy twice. And it's just this whole blurring of, and then you throw the trans stuff in it. I mean, which something that's always been there. I mean, it's just in my generation, we just call them he, she's. We just said, we didn't say anything about all these letters and all this stuff. I mean, that's just what we call them. And we stayed away from them because they carried knives and razors. If you talk to their girl, so that's always been there. And so why all of a sudden this emphasis, girls want to play with the boys. They don't say that about the boys playing with the girls, but it's okay. So it's just the blurred lines are just somewhat baffling. It's just somewhat baffling. Where are we going with this?
Well, I haven't got a call from the FCC, so we're still on the air.
Well, I just wanted to say, one thing is that with women's wrestling, folk style wrestling, the style of wrestling done in high school and colleges, what really got that started was Title IX, because Title IX, whenever that was passed in the 70s, it destroyed many men's sports because they had to match scholarships. And so, like men's gymnastics, men's swimming and diving, a lot of men's sports were just destroyed by it. And there were over 330 wrestling programs eliminated around the country, college wrestling programs eliminated in order to comply with Title IX.
I mean, you said
Now, over 330. And this is like back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Now, what wrestling did in response is they started to emphasize women's wrestling. And so now the NCAA, you have women wrestlers in college. You have Helen Marolis, who is a gold medalist in women's wrestling from Maryland. And what they do in Maryland at the high school level, because not all high schools have enough girls to have a girls wrestling team. And so what they do is that the girls are given the option of they can compete against the boys, which is considered co-ed, or they can just wrestle against girls. And then when it comes to the tournament time, they have a separate boys and girls tournament. Now, the boys can't wrestle in the girls' league because that's not co-ed. But the boys' league is considered co-ed, and then to give these girls more competition, they're allowed to compete against boys, because sometimes they'll be going up against a high school. They don't have a girl in their weight class to wrestle against, and that's usually at the JV level. So I think that's probably part of the situation that this girl found herself in. She was wrestling against girls. She dominated. The Minnesota, this was in Minnesota, it sounds like, which is a big wrestling state. Sounds like the high school wrestling federation allowed her to compete against the boys, similar to what they do in Maryland. And to place third and fourth in state in Minnesota is you're a really good wrestler. Yeah. So this girl, whoever she is, maybe at some point we'll be reading about her in the Olympics or some type of world championship among girl wrestlers. But this is where it all came from. It all kind of stemmed from Title IX, and then the elimination of these programs, and then the wrestling, the sport of wrestling, then actively promoting girls wrestling, so now they could get some of their programs back that they had lost.
Don, when are we going to have the first female kicker at the University of Texas?
Not for a while.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
Austin's woke, but we're not that woke.
All right, guys. Make sure you have a good weekend.
Hey, we definitely have to have this Demetrius Anthony debate moderated by Donald. I would love to see that. So,
bring it on. Bring it.
So now, are we going to talk about the Vikings and the Pistons, or just the Vikings and the Lions? We got to have some boundaries here now. We got to set some boundaries. So, Don, well, you'll have to get on your judge's suit, your moderator's costume here. We'll have Judge Hayes in the house.
All right.
Yeah, we can stick to football. We can gravitate into baseball. I'm sure basketball. Well, yeah. So I really want the football talk because he really believes that this is Super Bowl bound. He actually believes that. He sleeps it, breathes it.
Yes,
so
yes, he does. Yes, he does.
I think I've got an antidote to that. So
Me and Dave will be observers. So, make sure you get your bribes in to Judge Don. You'll have to catch him out. But hey, guys, have a great week. Look forward to talking to everybody next week. And as always, man, be safe.
All right, guys. Take care.
Yep.
Take care.
Have a good one.